What moral authority does Mr. Flávio Bolsonaro have to talk about corruption? He's the dirtiest guy in Brazil. It's Flávio Bolsonaro himself, the presidential candidate, who was caught on audio asking for 140 million for Forcaro. 140 million for Forcaro. He received 61 million. 3 months ago, he promised to account for it within a month. Yesterday, he decided to say it was a closed chapter without ever accounting for it. Man, corruption only exists when you investigate corruption. You can be the dirtiest guy in the world. If nobody investigates you, my friend, you walk down the street with your head held high saying, I'm honest as hell. Bolsonaro in his government. And then you say, oh, here we go again talking about Bolsonaro. Yeah, because politics is all about comparison. Okay? Politics, you choose between one and the other. Right? Politics, elections, it's multiple choice. So you always have to compare. Bolsonaro in his government. He ordered the dismissal of the Minister of Justice, who was Sérgio Moro, by the way. He ordered the dismissal of the chief to put Ramagem in. He ordered the dismissal of the superintendent of the federal police in Rio de Janeiro because he was investigating his son. And he did the same with all the investigations. The NSS scheme, which you mentioned here, started during Bolsonaro's government and was not investigated. The Banco Master case, Master was authorized to operate during Bolsonaro's government by Campos Neto, who was appointed by Bolsonaro. The complaints reached Campos Neto's desk and he put them away in a drawer. Lula took office, put in an independent CGU, an independent federal police force. The NSS investigation was opened, Banco Master was liquidated. And sometimes the way you talk, it sounds like this is something created by Lula's government, right? Which it isn't. It's a lie, a false narrative. Now, is Lula's son involved in something? The investigation will show. If he is, he should pay. That's the big difference. That's exactly the big difference. Whether it hurts or not. And I'm not the only one saying this here. Lula himself, his father, the president of the republic, said, if my son is involved, he will be held accountable. Then we remember Bolsonaro speaking at that leaked government meeting, saying, yeah, I'm not going to let them screw my son over. I'll remove whoever I have to remove. That's the difference, my brother. Here things are investigated. But what's the perception of part of society? Since there's an investigation now, there's news now. So corruption must be happening now. Do you understand? So what would be the best alternative? Keep everything tucked away in a drawer, put a federal police chief who only does what you say, tell them not to investigate anything, then you wouldn't be talking about this subject. Look at that. So, I think that's how it is. We can't turn this into a government achievement, which was to carry out the investigation, no matter who it hurts, even if it means hurting your own side, even if it reaches people who are close to the government, from the government's political group, to do this. And what about Lula? At no time, even when the investigation reached his son, his chief of staff, or the government's leader in Congress, at no time did he go to the director of the federal police or the minister of justice and say stop the investigation, because if he had, it would have stopped. And it continues. Now, I see, and this isn't your case. That's what I had to say to you. The right, historically in Brazil, uses a tactic called Udenismo. Udenismo. What is Udenismo? It comes from a political organization called UDN, National Democratic Union, also from the time of Getúlio Vargas. The UDN, whose leader was Carlos Lacerda, who even became governor of the state of Guanabara, which is now Rio de Janeiro, developed without having a national project, without a program, without any proposal. What was the UDN's approach? It was to accuse all their opponents of being thieves and corrupt. And the most curious thing is that the leaders of the UDN were in general the biggest corrupt people in Brazil. Udenismo. It became established as a practice of using the arguments of corruption or the criticism of corruption to push the country's major debates aside and to try to discredit those who had projects against the national elites. That's when it started with Getúlio Vargas, who was the guy who did it. He was the guy who created the CLT. He was the guy who for the first time gave citizenship to Brazilian workers, right? Carlos Lacerda made Getúlio Vargas commit suicide based on the corruption accusations he brought. He stopped a coup, right? Then came Juscelino Kubitschek, also riding the same wave of Udenismo. Do you know what Juscelino Kubitschek was accused of? Of having a triplex. Look at how uncreative the Brazilian elite is. Their repertoire doesn't even change. He was accused of having a triplex and was made ineligible because of it.
But he did have one then.
No, the worst part is that he didn't, just like Lula doesn't have one. Can you believe that? Or do you think Lula has a triplex? But don't tell me you fell for that, Robertinho. Are you going to fall for
I was
mine?
really
admiring
I trust
you.
the justice system.
I trust the justice system. Whatever the justice system says, I have to believe in Brazilian justice.
That's
I
good.
have to believe in Brazilian justice.
So,
believe
since the
in the
Brazilian
Brazilian
justice
Institute.
system has never proven that Lula owns a triplex. Never. You show me this proof from the justice system. Because then I'll tell you the same thing. It has never been proven. And since there is something basic in justice, which is People are innocent until proven otherwise. The presumption of innocence is a principle of the
This
rule
goes
of
for
law.
Flavio. Okay?
Everyone. It goes for everyone. They are innocent until proven otherwise, right? Now, I can't say that Lula has a triplex because it hasn't been proven. But I can tell you that Flavio has a 6 million mansion because he himself told you it was proven. 6 million. Go to Brazil.
Do you know
how
how he
to
paid
buy?
and
How?
more or
This
not?
one is there. Do you know how he managed to pay for the 6 million mansion? Look how fascinating that is. He paid for the 6 million mansion with a loan from BRB, the Bank of Brasilia. And do you know who was the director at BRB who gave him the loan? The same guy who worked for BRB to buy master for the banker who is in jail today. Strange, right? That's right. He gave the loan without him proving anything, right? In a totally unusual way. That's already been shown, okay? Flavio himself says, I paid for the mansion, I don't know what, and so on. I can't say that Lula has a triplex, because that's not proven. But I can tell you that Flavio bought 51 properties in cash, because that's proven by the courts.
Proven.
51 properties.
Why isn't it in the
cash,
declaration?
proven, admitted.
Why isn't it in his declaration
No, that
after
was
the name of...
He speculated in real estate. He bought, resold. Got it? That was the case back then. That was
I understand.
I understand.
He
But
is
when
not
buy
50 years old. Real estate? He
bought
one, sold two,
51
sold
properties. Cash money, right?
three. Broker.
I can't tell you that Lula has a triplex because that's not proven.
But he could have, because he
But,
had almost 10
of course he could
million
have. He was
there,
president of
right?
the
I would
republic
clap.
twice. He would have had every means to own one, but he doesn't. I can't tell you that she has it, but I can tell you that the wife and mother of the head of the group, known as Escritório do Crime, Adriano da Nóbrega, were aides to Flávio Bolsonaro in the Alerj when he was a state deputy, because that's proven. And if you ask him, he will admit it because he's already admitted it publicly, because it's there. They were aides. That's documented. Do you know who headed the group known as Escritório do Crime? Escritório do Crime was a group of hitmen. They were responsible for killing Marielle Franco. Escritório do Crime was the biggest militia in Rio de Janeiro and Rio das Pedras. And the head of the group known as Escritório do Crime, who was honored by Flávio Bolsonaro more than once with awards, the Tiradentes Medal at the Legislative Assembly of Rio, was Adriano da Nóbrega, who was murdered later during the Bolsonaro government to silence him in Bahia.
When?
He was threatening when there were rumors that he was going to make a plea bargain. His mother and wife walked in Flavio's office. This is proven. And Queiroz did too. This is proven. So we have to talk about what is proven. That said, and going back to Udenismo, a historical method used by the right and the Brazilian elites to try to discredit anyone who has a political project for ordinary people in this country. Corruption is a cancer. It's a plague of the Brazilian state. It has to be eradicated. Because you know what it is? Corruption is the improper mixing of public and private interests. Corruption is when a public official is co-opted by the market to defend its interests through lobbying and receives a reward for it. The name for this is corruption. Today, it is a market strategy used by capitalist companies, not only in Brazil, but all over the world. This idea they sold us, that Brazil is the most corrupt country in the world, that there's no corruption abroad, is the biggest lie on the planet. Just look at the corruption schemes in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, right? In the rest of Latin America. Corruption is endemic in the bourgeois
Their
state.
lobbying is legalized.
It is endemic, but is there corruption?
Yes,
Still,
yes. If you consider
By the way,
lobbying.
let's mention a case here. Let's mention a case of corruption that is being investigated. Currently being investigated by the Public Prosecutor's Office, by the United States Attorney's Office. One of the rare earth mines, which we started talking about here, is the one in Poços de Caldas, right? Do you know which fund came in wanting to buy it? One of the fund's shareholders is Donald Trump's son. It's been sued in the United States because this same fund, of which he is a shareholder, made contracts with the Department of Defense, with the Pentagon in the United States. So corruption is endemic. Boulos, so you're normalizing it. No, sir. What we can't do is think that corruption is a political weapon to attack one party or another. Corruption is embedded in the formation of our capitalist state.
On both
in
sides,
Brazil,
both
no,
the right
but
and the
it's
left.
not. It is the state, man. It's the machine. Why are we going to fight corruption?
From top to bottom.
With a deep transformation in the Brazilian political system, starting with what's called political reform. Currently, right? Path. Put an end to the revolving door. Do you know where there's corruption that few people see? In the regulatory agencies of this country.
Are you sure?
So you see, I won't like any agency because otherwise, soon, you upset. You don't need to be mad at me. US stopped this, that. So I'm not going to mention anyone. But there are agencies to regulate health insurance, agencies to regulate energy, agencies to regulate water, agency to regulate who knows what. Pay close attention and look for it. A good part of the guys who go through these agencies, well, not all of them. There are honest people in the agencies. It's worth saying. There are. It's real. I'm not just saying this to cover things up. There are. But a significant portion of the people who go through these agencies, after they leave, become top executives with huge salaries in the sector they were supposed to regulate. Or worse, sometimes they came from the very sector they were supposed to regulate. It's an unhealthy entanglement. It's a revolving door. We need to have strict laws to fight this, the revolving door. Second, we need to have a change in the political system to voting for. I'm convinced of that.
Are you going to vote for a party now?
You vote for the list of that slate, that party, that thing, that coalition. You vote. How does that work? It might seem a bit strange, but we are used to individual voting.
You won't vote for the person anymore.
No, for president, you vote for the person. For parliament, you vote for the list.
You won't vote for Natalia Boulos. You vote for PSOL.
That's it. You would vote for the PSOL list or for
and then
Lula's
the party
list, let's say. The party decides
chooses who it's
there
going
have
to
to
be.
be transparent criteria, even with internal primaries. So the parties can decide who goes where on the list, from top to bottom. Otherwise, the party president also becomes the most powerful guy in Brazil. And it can't be like that, right?
But that's how it already is.
No, but it is. Because of the electoral fund. He has
The
a lot
first
of
on the
power
list
in
will be
managing
the one
electoral
who
fund.
puts in the most money.
Yeah, it ends
just
up being like
an
that. It
alternate
ends up being
senator.
like that if you don't have criteria.
But I don't understand.
But you can have criteria. You can have an open primary.
People are agreeing with you. 4,000 people agreeing
What
with
is
you.
partyless voting, folks? Partyless voting works like this. You come and say, look, this is Lula's list. There are 2, 3, and you can even make it equal, men and women. This can be required by law, and you could have 50% of Congress made up of women. 50% of city councils made up of women. 50% of legislative assemblies made up of women. You fight against underrepresentation. You set quotas for black men and women too, right? Also within the list. No, but a quota for example, you have to have at least one black person among the first 3 names on the list. Because how does it work? You make a list. You vote for the list. So that list got I don't know how many millions of votes. Those millions of votes are enough to elect 80. So the first 80 names on the list are elected. That's the list vote. That's how it works in most European parliamentary countries, right? Yeah, I support party list voting. Why? Do you know what creates the central? I was a congressman for 3 years and I saw these guys operate. I saw how they play and that the game is rough. The centrão is created in the following way. It's anonymous individual voting. So why does the person who votes for Zé das Couves from Republicanos or from PSD or União Brasil, from Público Maril, man, votes for Zé das Couves? They don't know what Zé das Couves' political position is. They don't know what Zé das Couves stands for. They don't know how Zé das Couves will vote in Congress. They vote for Zé das Couves because Zé das Couves paved their street, because Zé das Couves brought something, because Zé das Couves put their sister-in-law at the front of the line at the health clinic.
Give
because
out the
Zé das
basic
Couves,
food basket.
it's clientelism. Clientelism. The logic of legislative elections is individual and based on clientelism. You have some people on the left and on the right, on both sides, who are elected by opinion votes, who get elected because of their ideas, right? Okay. And with the mandatory congressional budget amendments, clientelism became even stronger because the congressman became a distributor of the budget. The senator became a distributor of the budget. This is a scandal. It's a scandal, isn't it? And the reality is that you perpetuate these people in power. And it's kind of like voting in the dark. Because you vote for the guy because he helped you here. But you don't know if this guy is going to vote for 6x1 or against 6x1. If he's going to vote to tax the super rich or not. If he's going to defend you or screw you over. You don't know. When you use party list voting, you say, I vote for Lula and I vote for Lula's list. The guy votes for Bolsonaro, he votes for Bolsonaro's list. You make the parliament more politicized.